Hey everyone, welcome to Focus Friday. This is Dan Mickle, and I'm glad to be with you this week. Focus Friday is a weekly vlog dedicated to starting discussions around coaching and education spaces. And this week I want to talk about an interesting topic that can get a little confusing in the sense of it merging with other terms, but I want to talk about barriers and specifically how to break down those barriers when we're talking about coaching and educating. And I'm not talking about the barriers that we mainly talk about or focus on, like economic barriers or entry barriers into a sport or into an activity. I want to talk more about what are some of the barriers that may be holding back a player or a student from learning. And one of the examples I'd like to use is, let's talk about serving, and whether it's volleyball or tennis or another isolated activity in any sport, shooting free throws. A lot of times when a player is struggling, the coach's first reaction is, well, we're going to work on the technique and let's just keep pushing through, and we're going to get lots of reps and practice and practice and practice. And that goes into the philosophy of mental toughness. And that's why I have such a love-hate relationship with that term. I understand why we say mental toughness. I get the overall reaching aspect of that term, but the problem I have with that is there's a lot of times that mental toughness seems to be materialized as just grit and resilience, and no matter what, keep going, and eventually you'll get it. Keep serving that ball, and eventually it'll get over the net, and just work and work and work and lots of reps. But I like to think of it more as mental flexibility, because what if it's something holding us back? And it's not about just getting those reps and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. It's about, we need to think about a different way of doing it. And I think that's where we lose that component when we talk about mental toughness. We just think about grit and pounding our head against that wall to break through it versus opening the door, going around the wall. So when it comes to serving, again, I like using this example because I think it's clean and it's kind of easy. You have a player that's struggling with their serving, and instead of saying, okay, let's just get you 1,000 reps, keep going, 1,000 hours, and you'll be great at this, I think we need to step back and say, are there barriers? Are there something that holding us back? And it could be something like performance anxiety. And maybe the player has a hard time serving because the focus is on them, and that's what creates the anxiety. They have anxiety because they're afraid to let the coach down, or let the team down, or let the players down. That we don't take the time to realize that it's not the skill, it's not specific to serving that's causing the issue, it's this other barrier. But we just kind of ignore it, and we think that just pushing and getting through that will help. So we got to look at what some of these barriers are, and there could be a ton of them. It could be fear of failure, it could be imposter syndrome. Someone gets selected for a top team and now they have to go out and run plays or command the offense or command the defense, and now they freeze because they feel like, uh-oh, I got by, but now I'm being exposed on. So those are the things that we kind of have to look at. Too many times as coaches and educators, we ignore those barriers. We're so focused on them getting the skill and getting the results that we don't possibly take the time to sit back and think, wow, there could be something larger at play here. We think, well, maybe I'm just not teaching it correctly, or they just can't grasp this concept. But again, there could be something much larger at play. Anxiety, negative self-talk, all these things that could be actually the barrier, and it's not the skill. The problem is, a lot of times as coaches, we don't have training in this. We're very good at our sport. I'm a good soccer coach. I'm a good basketball coach. I'm a good volleyball coach. I'm a good history teacher, science teacher, whatever we could be talking about. But we don't train enough on the mental side to say, okay, this is actually what's holding me back. It has nothing to do with my sport other than I'm currently doing it. And that's what's holding us back. So I think we need to take time to start to recognize and look. And so how can we do that? Well, in your gym or in your practice or your classroom, when you start to see students or athletes fail at a task that you're asking, instead of automatically going to okay, they're not grasping the technique, maybe their elbow's not high enough, or they're not making connections between words, or they don't understand the math form. Instead of going right there and thinking that maybe it's the teaching method or they're not receiving the teaching method, let's actually think about what could be stopping that from happening. What could be blocking them from even understanding what I'm doing? And again, especially on the sports side, a lot of times it can be some sort of performance anxiety. And the thing with performance anxiety is it's not always equal. Sometimes someone has performance anxiety because they're afraid of letting their coach down or letting their team down, or sometimes it's afraid of letting their parents down. Some people, it's the spotlight of being out there, focus on them. If you think about serving in the volleyball aspect, you have the whole team on the court, but the moment you're serving, all the focus is on that one person. And maybe that's the problem. So we need to work on relaxation techniques, visualization techniques, or something to get over that before we can even get to the technique side. Too many times there's a belief that if we work really hard on the technique and the skill, it'll push that anxiety and the other stuff. You have anxiety because you're not good at that skill. And that's just not how it works. Sometimes you can literally be the best at your craft or your skill, but still have anxiety. So being efficient at a skill or being on a great team doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to have those anxious moments that we have to do. So as coaches and leaders, we have to learn and start to figure out how to identify them and how we actually work on them and what we can do to help them. So again, how do we do that? As soon as you start to see someone underperforming, don't instantly go right to the skill. Talk about, okay, is there anything else going on? Do we notice a change in attitude, a change in motivation? Are they a little bit more timid? Is this player usually, super excited to do a skill or to do something for the team? But in this case, they kind of hold back and they're a little bit more reserved. That could be a sign that there's more going on. But we just can't ignore that. We need to name it and say, okay, this is an anxiety problem, or this is a comprehension problem, or this is an understanding barrier, and then go into the technique. Look at, okay, how can we overcome those barriers? How can we get over that anxiety? How can we get over the attention issue? Maybe you're trying to teach something in a classroom that's everyone's in their own little pods and it's noisy and it's loud and it's something that a student can't understand. So it's not that they can't understand the information that you're providing them, it's they can't understand that information in the environment that you're providing them. The barrier is the environment. Same when we're looking at athletics. Maybe you're teaching something as a group and someone's not getting it. It's not that they can't get the skill, it's just that they can't get it or they're not getting the feedback they need because they're in a group environment. We need to isolate it more. So don't be so quick to jump on the, maybe I'm not teaching it or instructing it correctly, or maybe they're not hearing it, and look at the bigger environment and what some of those barriers may be to that. And I think that's where we have to start at. And that's why it's really important to look at what barriers might you have. And when you're forming a club team or you have these all-star teams where you're bringing in people that you don't really know about, pay attention in the very beginning. See how they act in different environments. The group environment, the solo environment, a fast pace, a slow pace. See how they emotionally they are and how they react, because that can affect how they learn and how you have to coach them. But again, a lot of times we just talk too much about this is my method and this is how it's going to be, and once you get it, you'll be fine. There could be better ways to handle this if we take the time to learn and understand those players and the students that we have and what barriers they have to their learning. All right, I hope you enjoyed this week's Focus Friday. I will see you back here next week. Remember, you can always reach out to me, danmickle.com for the website, and across all social media at Real Dan Mickle. Would love to hear your thoughts. What barriers have you come across? How you've solved some of those barriers? I'm sure there's a lot of coaches and teachers and educators out there that have a lot of these barriers or come across them, and would love to know how you helped it. How did you help that student, or how did you help that athlete in a challenging situation? So make sure you put something in the comments and let's start this discussion. And as always, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get the latest updates and the videos every week. Peace, much love, don't suck. One day one, it's either day one or one day, it's your choice. And I'll see you back here next week for the next Focus Friday.